Welcome to Saving America. This is your host, Dr. David D. Schein. Saving America welcomes Joel Gardner. He is the president of the Jefferson Council, a special organization at the University of Virginia. Joel is a graduate of UVA twice with his BA and then his law degree. In full disclosure, I also hold 2 degrees from UVA. While at UVA, he distinguished himself by being part of organizations like Phi Beta Kappa, Z Society, and the Raven Society. After a stint in the Army, he enrolled in law school where he was an editor of the Law Review and a member of the Order of the Coif, a truly distinguished record. After law school, he initially practiced law with a major Wall Street law firm, then segged into investment banking, where he spent the next 30 years as a corporate finance banker specializing in transactions with the Pacific Basin. However, Joel never truly left the university. He served on 4 university boards, including being a founding member of the Rotunda Society board. He's chaired more than a half dozen fundraising efforts, most recently served on the university's committee on free expression and free inquiry. He's been a UVA parent twice and is the author of From Rebel Yell to Revolution, which tells the story of the momentous 4 years from 1966 to 1970 while he was an undergrad at UVA. In another interesting parallel, I'm currently working on a book called A Cheap Education about my 4 years in college at a very different school, 1969, 1973. He's traveled around the country giving book talks to numerous UVA alumni clubs. He also published a number of articles dealing with UVA for the James G. Martin Center for Academic Renewal. Joel is actively involved in the creation of the Jefferson Council, served on its first executive committee, and he's now returned as new role as president of the Jefferson Council. Hey, we had to shorten his bio so we'd have time for the interview itself. We welcome Joel Gardner for his first appearance on Saving America.
Thanks, David. Really great to meet you.
Well, we're so looking forward to having you join us today. As you know, we ask our guests 3 broad questions. The first is, of all the universities in America, why would it be important to focus on free speech at the University of Virginia?
Well, UVA is really a unique institution, and we can start off with the fact that it has its 2 founders, not only presidents of the United States and founding fathers, but also authors of 2 of the most revered documents in Western civilization. Thomas Jefferson, the author of the Declaration of Independence, and James Madison, the author of the Bill of Rights and the First Amendment. And because of that incredible, unique situation, I think most UVA graduates over the years has looked back to those 2 founders as people to emulate. Current history has reversed some of that, as these 2 incredible minds have been judged by the mores of current society rather than the time they lived. But when Jefferson founded the university, and he was the main founder, it was his child, one of the things he said, at this institution, we will not be afraid to follow the truth wherever it may lead. And that is something that was always part and parcel, I think, of our education at UVA. And the other unique aspects of the university, like its grounds, which they call it instead of the campus.
That's right.
Designed by Jefferson and are the only UNESCO World Heritage Site in North America. Things like that bind us. And UVA has always had a very, very strong feeling of camaraderie amongst its students and a very, very strong cultural bond amongst the students. That cultural bond has been, in my opinion, shredded over the past decade, and we can get into that. But the First Amendment is key, and the Jeffersonian legacy of civil debate is part and parcel of UVA. So I think we are a unique institution, and our legacy is freedom of expression. I don't think there's any other university that can match that.
Absolutely. And so what has happened to free speech on so many university campuses, including UVA? Why is it so critical to turn that around now, to face it right now?
I think it's not difficult to pinpoint it. And it really all comes back to the politicization of our college campuses. I mean, for I think most of the history of higher education, the foremost purpose was education, starting probably more than a decade ago. And it started well before, but it really picked up speed in the mid 2000s and really became the most important part of the academia after around 2010 was indoctrination. And it was indoctrination in a social justice policies and an agenda. And I think people now will put a term on it, and it really was the DEI movement, diversity, equity, and inclusion. I wrote an article about it 3 or 4 years ago. It's been in the press a lot recently. I think I called that out a lot earlier. I wasn't the first one. There's a brilliant article by the former dean of the Yale Law School, Dean Kronman, called The Downsides of Diversity. It was published in the Wall Street Journal. And basically, I mean, there's a lot in there, but one of the major points he made is that DEI, as applied on college campuses, is not an academic ideal, but a political movement. And that's exactly what it was. And what makes it most troublesome is that the concept of DEI is not what those words mean. Diversity,
True. Absolutely.
and inclusion. Diversity means diversity of many things, but not the most important diversity, which is diversity of thought.
Yes.
That has been given total short shrift on college campuses. You can read the works of Jonathan Haidt, who is a prior professor at UVA, is now up at NYU. But there was very little diversity of thought amongst in academia, amongst both the administrations and the faculty. Equity means equality of and final, I'd cut for a second, but it's equality of result and not equality of opportunity.
Absolutely.
And inclusion has meant just the opposite. Inclusion has not meant the inclusion of all groups. It's meant the inclusion of certain groups which are deemed to be marginalized and which, in fact, today run the universities both at a faculty, administrative, and student level. But it's not been inclusion, and it's not been inclusivity. And I've seen it very much at UVA, where we had such a close bond, where there was a great community amongst faculty, students, administrators. It really was an amazing place. And now it's divided. It's been fractured, and it's divided by identity groups. And it's broken my heart to see that, because I think, as you kind of detailed in my biography, UVA has been in my heart and soul since I stepped on the grounds in 1966, never truly left it. And it's really terrible to see what's become of the community, the sense of community and camaraderie there.
Well, it's interesting for us in my approach here in Saving America, because we interviewed a fantastic young lady. She happens to be up in a college in Maryland. She's a senior now. She was an intern for the Heritage Society this summer, and I happened across her because she wrote a brilliant article. I had no idea it was written by a college junior. And I interviewed her. She's Asian American, and she was so critical of DEI. She said, I want to be respected for who I am and my accomplishments and my intellectual ability. I don't want to be considered something because I'm Asian or female. And she just gave such a compelling presentation on where DEI has failed, but not just I think academia, but our society in general. So anyway, so we've been on this streak for a while, and we've interviewed two different professors on this same subject. We interviewed a professor who was fired from a university in Bakersfield, California, because he spoke out for conservative causes. And before he was fired, by the way, I got a chance to go out and speak on that campus. So I thought that was kind of interesting. And then I just interviewed Amy Wax, who you may have crossed her name. Is yeah.
Yeah.
And it's so interesting because I'm a Penn alum, and she was incredibly penalized. If she didn't have tenure, she'd be out on the street. But they have done some rather incredible things to her for being critical of DEI while being a professor at Penn. So it is interesting to see how things are going. So our third question is, what is the purpose of the Jefferson Council, and how has its work to date improved the matter of free speech at UVA, and what more needs to be done in this regard?
Okay. Jefferson Council was formed over 3 years ago by a group of alumni who saw what was going on at the university and was very concerned. I think anybody who was focused on life at the university and had an interest, whether you were an alum or a faculty member or a parent, I could see that there was what I would call a free speech suppression. And this, it wasn't suppression by fiat, it was suppression de facto. And that suppression was, if you did not agree with the agenda that was being propagated virtually on a daily basis on the grounds, you were going to be marginalized and you were going to be attacked on social media, and students were afraid to speak up in class. And just to show that that's, I think, what a lot of us were seeing, but that was in essence, there was not intellectual diversity. There was a fear of people from moderate conservative to more strongly conservative speaking up on the grounds. And the group saw that, as well as attacks on our founder, Thomas Jefferson, who's known as Mr. Jefferson in Charlottesville and on the grounds. But, you know, we all recognize he, like no other human, was a perfect human being, that his contributions, not only to our university, but to our nation and Western civilization, far exceeded, you know, his, what in today's world is considered, you know, and should be considered to be failings in terms of the social contract. But it wasn't in his day. And as I said, you know, his contributions far surpassed that. And he was revered on grounds. And I think a lot of the attacks on the Jeffersonian legacy, not only him as a person, but his, what I had mentioned before, his mandate that the truth be followed, no matter where it may lead. That just wasn't the case anymore. The truth wasn't being followed, the agenda was being followed. And so these alumni got together. We had a number of pillars. I mean, free expression and diversity of thought was one. The Jeffersonian legacy was another. The integrity of the Jefferson grounds was another, which is, of course, distinct to UVA. And the fourth was our honor system, which was a revered part of tens of thousands of UVA graduates for over a century, and which was in the process and has continued to be eviscerated. to an extent that it's barely recognizable to what it was. But I think if you ask what most students remember from their time at UVA, it was the concept of honor and the importance of being an honorable person. More important than wealth, more important than success was being a person of honor and integrity. And that was imbued in us back then. And it was not even slowly, it was quickly being frittered away. So that was another one of our mandates. But those were sort of the founding principles. As time went on, we grew in numbers. We've got over 3,000 members today, people concerned about the university. And I think we've played an amazing role in helping to foster intellectual diversity and freedom of speech. And we've done that in a number of ways. First, we brought many speakers, well-known speakers, moderate, conservative speakers on grounds. We had Vice President Pence, we had George Will, we've had academic speakers like Heather McDonald. And I think we brought people to the grounds that never would have been here if it wasn't for us. Secondly, and I think very, very importantly, is we have focused granularly on events on the grounds and have shined the light of day on them and have educated the university community to how freedom of expression and fairness to all students has been abused. And I think that would have gone uncommented on if we hadn't been out there willing to hear from students and faculty members about what was going on. They felt comfortable speaking to us, and we brought that to the public. And I think that's had a lot of consequence. I can tell you the formation of the free speech committee that I served on was very much in response to some of the writings I did to the public. At that time, interestingly, I had also said the university should adopt the Calvin Committee principles on the university not taking institutional views on political and social matters. That was deep-sixed by the powers that be at the time. And now just recently, they suddenly discovered how important that is, not to be commenting on public affairs because they came under quite a lot of scrutiny and bad publicity.
Yes.
But I think perhaps those were two ways in which I think we have fostered trying to have a level playing field for the free expression on grounds, is that we've had the back of individual students, student groups, and faculty, and I think have given them the courage and the comfort for them to come out and speak, knowing we are there to back them up, when before, in many ways, they would have been criticized and in certain ways had, because it's true, had actions taken against them. I mean, there's certain individual students in the stories. I mean, I could go on for the next half hour talking about how individual students have been mistreated in abominable ways by the administration in that regard. And it's important for people to know, because any parent that would learn of some of that stuff, and most alumni that would learn of that, would be horrified. And I think part of the problem is that most alumni are not aware of what is going on. The administration tells its story. They tell a wonderful story. They have multi-million-dollar PR departments behind them. And most people hear certain things that come out in the university official statements and take that as fact and don't understand that what's going on. And just as it happens today, I think it was last night or very recently on the Joe Scarborough show, and he's not a particularly conservative commentator. His daughter goes to UVA.
Oh,
And
interesting.
he came out with a comment saying how terrible that his daughter came home and basically said that if you come out and speak openly against what is the common agenda there, the common adopted thought, that you're marginalized, you're attacked, and as a result, students just basically sit in class and are afraid to speak up. That just came out. You can find that online. But that's the truth, and people don't understand it. It's denied by the administration because if you believe what they say and the positions they take, you'd never know it. But they talk the talk and they don't walk the walk, which is why an organization like the Jefferson Council is so important, not only to the University of Virginia, it's important to universities across the country. And you know, now there are many, many groups similar to UVA. There's a group called AFSA, which I think now is 26, 27 similar groups to the Jefferson Council around the country, we were one of the founding members, 5 or 6 founding members, and they're around the country. But it is a problem. I mean, this is a definite problem, not only at universities, this is K through 12. If you go,
yes, absolutely.
their
And of course,
indoctrination has replaced education as the ground stone of education.
and it's killing us, and it's really been so difficult. I'm university professor, as I think you know, and I have seen a dramatic decline in the quality of our students coming into our colleges, and we have lost the focus in K through 12 of very basic skills is reading, writing, and arithmetic. And I know it sounds so, 18th century to talk about the 3 R's, but I've got a student who's a sophomore in college, supposed to write a paper on philosophy. It came by one of the committees I serve on, and he didn't know how to write a paper, did not know how to write a research paper. And this is someone who's in a private college where I teach, and it's like, what happened? What are we doing over there? These should not be political inculcation centers. And even if you are a political inculcation center, at least teach them how to read and write and how to, put sentences and paragraphs and things together. That's why I was so impressed with our visitor from the Heritage Society, the summer intern, because her writing was clear and positive. She was a great speaker, and it's like, where are the rest of these college students today? And I would say UVA, where I taught while I was working on my doctorate in the early 2000s at the McIntyre School of Business, I can tell you it was a very good experience for me because the students were articulate and on top of things. But I know things since that was about the year 2003. I know things have declined since then on the campus because of this extreme pressure towards DEI.
Well, Dave, it's not only that, it's not only the failure to inculcate the basics into our students, like being able to write in a manner in which people can understand, put more than 2 or 3 sentences together. They don't teach history anymore. I mean, there was a history requirement when I was an undergrad. There's no history.
Sure.
A lot of people graduate having no knowledge of our own American system, of our own American history. Forget about world history or Western civilization is now a horrible concept, to many of the people with the agenda. I mean, it's just terrible. I mean, the fact that I'm the son of an immigrant who escaped the czar at the turn of the last century, came over here, grew up in extreme poverty on the Lower East Side. I mean, to live in a society that has created more freedom and more wealth than any society in the history of the world is a blessing. And it's something that every student should understand. Without this country, without America, without our history, without our traditions, without our freedoms, there are tens of millions of people who would have suffered horrible existences. Hundreds of millions, probably. And
Yes,
I think that
I
just
think hundreds
doesn't
of
come
millions is
across.
very safe, and we've developed so much. And Joel, we could do this for hours, of course, but why don't we conclude with how can our audience get more information about you and about the work of the Jefferson Council?
I think they could, if they really want to know about me, they could read my book, because they'll know more than they ever need to. But that book really is a commentary on the other period in our recent history, which was somewhat similar to what is going on today, was during the Vietnam War.
Yes.
And our society was first coming under attack, and where the norms were totally under siege. That was a period when the world turned upside down and went 180 degrees in about 3 years. They can read my articles at the James Martin Center. Could just go online, Google James Martin Center for Academic and Renewal, and read my articles about the politicization of the college campuses and what I call the new McCarthyism at the University of Virginia. The Jefferson Council, I would say just go to our website and just Google the Jefferson Council UVA, and you will find on our website, you can join up, and right there, we publish news stories all the time. We publish stories about what's going on at UVA. You can read a lot of these stories about what's going on around academia and the campus reform and the college fix, which are broad and around the nation. But if you really want to know on a granular basis what's going on at Mr. Jefferson's University, the foundation of the American ideals, and following the truth wherever it may lead, you should be reading, sign up and read the Jefferson Council, our blogs on a regular basis. And certainly would love to have people who are interested, who want to see our founders' dreams come true at the university that they started. We are a public university. We're not an elite private university. We have students from all spheres, from all states. Jefferson wanted his university, although a state university, to be representative of the United States. It's a wonderful place. It's a unique institution, and I would certainly hope that those listening would support us in our efforts to really create that level playing field for the free and civil exchange of ideas, which is what a university should be about and what Mr. Jefferson dreamed of.
As we grow up, a common reference for success or failure is the letter grade. Whether we're in grammar school or college, we all want an A grade and certainly regard an F as a big failure. Here at Saving America, we scan the news for reports of celebrities, politicians, or others who just end up in the public eye. So the A grades are awarded to people and organizations for great service to their communities, and the F grades, of course, are unfortunately more common, are awarded to those who need to do a lot better. 3 11-year-old girls rescue 6-year-old neighbor from an attempted kidnapping. Yes, folks, I'm not making this up. It's not a TV show. It is so much fun when the story has a happy ending. So it is 8 p.m. in Kent, Washington, near an apartment complex. Our brave 3 11-year-old girls are approaching an ice cream truck. Nearby, they see a 6-year-old neighbor being hauled away by a stranger. They called out, and the man claimed to know the child, but the child shook her head that she did not know him. The gals went into action, surrounded the would-be kidnapper while recording him with their mobile phones. He realized that he was risking discovery, so he finally set the child free and ran off. In the meantime, another person called 911, and the man, a 40-year-old resident of the area, was arrested for attempted kidnapping. The local police referred to the girls' actions as selfless bravery, and I certainly agree. Therefore, Saving America awards the 3 unnamed girls from Kent, Washington, and their families the coveted Saving America A grade for quick and heroic action. Business students, business persons, or consumers, business law impacts much of what you do. This segment is designed to help you get past the headlines on key stories. The Supreme Court won't hear challenge to Illinois' ban on assault weapons and other gun appeals. SCOTUS refused to take up several Second Amendment-backed challenges to an Illinois law that prohibits so-called assault weapons, such as the popular AR-15 rifle. The surprise ruling means that the Illinois law will remain on the books, at least for now. Surprise because some of the same SCOTUS recently ruled that bump stocks could not be banned by the U.S. Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms Agency. This was a device that became infamous due to the mass shooting in Las Vegas. It allows a regular rifle to be fired quickly. The holding determined that Congress and not the ATF would have the power to make such a determination. The ruling also was in contrast to SCOTUS's ruling in 2022 with the case of New York State Rifle and Pistol Association versus Brune. The High Court upheld the Second Amendment right for the public to bear arms in public for self-defense. Therefore, any limitations had to meet a high test, what is referred to as the strict scrutiny test. What that means is if there is a law that limits a constitutional right, like the Second Amendment, it must be narrowly structured to only serve the public good and not impair constitutional rights. The Illinois state law in question made it a felony offense to have assault weapons, including AR-15s. The trigger was a mass shooting that involved an AR-15 and resulted in 7 dead and dozens injured during the 4th of July parade in 2023. It is likely that lawsuits pending against the Illinois statute will continue in the lower courts. The issue seems likely to return to the Supreme Court in the future. Some may ask if further Second Amendment cases against the statute might return to SCOTUS. Why did SCOTUS not review it now? The selection of cases by the High Court is tough. 4 of the 9 justices must agree to hear a case. It must be ripe for consideration. In this case, some of the conservative justices were outvoted. In fact, Justice Thomas stated that the AR-15 is the most popular semi-automatic rifle in the United States and is in common use today. This would seem to telegraph his support for keeping this weapon available to the public. To give our audience an idea of the number of cases decided by SCOTUS each year, over the previous 10 years, the most cases decided was 82 and the least was 47. Think about the thousands of cases that might have been presented to the High Court in that time. 5 charged in attempt to bribe a juror on one of the largest COVID-related fraud cases in U.S. history. The federal government spent billions of dollars trying to help Americans deal with the COVID shutdowns and the many hardships that resulted. Sadly, billions were reportedly wasted. In April, 7 people went to trial after being accused of participating in a scheme to steal $40 million from a federal COVID program meant to provide food for children. The defendants have been linked to the nonprofit Feeding Our Future, which received funds from the federal program. A total of 70 defendants have been charged so far in the fraud scheme centering on the nonprofit, with 5 convicted and 18 pleading guilty. Of over $250 million in federal funds taken, only $50 million or 20% has been recovered. In federal court in Minnesota, the government is charging Abdiz Sharif Farah, Abdimajad Mohammed Nur, Said Safifi Farah, Abdul Karim Safi Farah, and Ladan Mohammed Ali with conspiracy to bribe a juror, bribery of a juror, and corruptly influencing a juror, according to the indictment. In the scheme, the defendants allegedly discovered the name of the one minority juror on the jury. She also happened to be the youngest. They did surveillance on her and put together a war chest of $200,000. According to the indictment, one of the defendants followed the juror home and purchased a GPS tracking device to put on her car to track her. In the scheme, they reportedly offered her $120,000 in cash if she would find all the defendants innocent, and further to persuade other jurors to vote innocent with her. Of all things, given the amount of money in play here, the defendants asked for public defenders when they were charged. The question became, where is all that money? The prosecutors objected to the public defenders, citing the defendants' alleged access to money parked abroad. Prosecutors said that money was used to purchase and construct a 12-story apartment building in Nairobi, Kenya. However, the judge did make a temporary appointment, so it'll be interesting to see how that goes. Of course, if you've got that much money, generally speaking, you don't use a public defender. You use a high-powered, famous criminal defense attorney. In any event, truly a case that will probably become a made-for-TV movie in the future. Texas gets a win from the U.S. Fifth Circuit Court in dispute with Department of Justice over the buoys in the Rio Grande River. This case has attracted attention in the U.S. as well as Mexico. Texas Governor Greg Abbott was tired of the U.S. border control not controlling the long border between Texas and Mexico. Many private property owners along the Rio Grande River also were complaining about the lack of protection. Governor Abbott then had a row of buoys established in the Rio Grande River to discourage persons from illegally trying to wade across certain shallow parts of the river. The Biden Justice Department filed a complaint in July 2023 against the buoys in federal district court. The Department of Justice won the first round. Texas was ordered to remove the buoys. Instead, Texas then appealed to the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals, which in January of this year temporarily allowed the buoys to stay while the case was further examined. The Fifth Circuit full panel just ruled in favor of Texas and that the buoys can stay. The court was very divided in its opinion. There were 7 dissenting justices. Circuit Judge Don Willett, speaking for the majority of the court, explained that the Department of Justice offered no evidence that the barrier threatened safety, and further, that the complaints about Mexico being upset with the buoys was not a reason to remove them. An interesting dissent was by Circuit Judge James Ho, who said that the Texas should prevail because it was a strategic military decision to repel a foreign invasion. That would make this a political dispute that the federal courts lack the authority to decide. I don't have the expertise to sort that one out, but it's a very interesting take on the situation. And indeed, we have a state within the United States involved in a dispute with another country. So it's a pretty significant situation. Governor Abbott announced that Texas can keep these buoys in the water, securing our border. Continuing, he stated, Biden tried to remove them. I fought to keep them in the water. That is exactly where they will stay. Justice. That's from Governor Abbott. It's likely that the Department of Justice will appeal to SCOTUS, although it could also continue in the trial court to see if it can win there. So more to come, folks, on this situation. Saving America welcomes Doug Lawrence. He is the founder of Talent C. That's a registered trademark and is focused on all things mentoring as a solution provider. Doug Lawrence is an international certified mentor and holds 2 mentor certifications, Certificate of Practice Mentor and Certificate of Practice Journey Mentor from the international mentoring community. Doug is the only one to hold the Certificate of Practice Journey Mentor in the world today. Wow. He has over 30 years of mentoring and leadership experience and is recognized as a thought leader in the mentoring space. Doug authored the book entitled The Gift of Mentoring, and his second book entitled You Are Not Alone became an Amazon #1 bestseller in North America and the UK. He is a bronze medal recipient in the Global Book Awards. Our series of interviews for Saving America establishes that the world is full of interesting people. We welcome Doug Lawrence for his first appearance on Saving America.
And thank you so much for the opportunity to be on your show this morning. This is really, I'm really pumped for this.
Well, that sounds good. Well, we're pumped to have you here for sure. As you know, we ask our guests 3 questions to let our audience learn about them and what they're working on. Many business people today spend years in college and a good percentage to get a graduate degree. Why do they need mentoring as well?
It's a good question, and I get asked that a fair amount by people that are in the C-suite or people that are wanting or aspire to become a leader in their organization or other organizations. And a couple things. Number one is that what mentoring will do for those people that have, that have that education is that it's also going to reinforce their need for critical thinking. And critical thinking seems to be, since COVID and a lot of other things that have happened in the world today, critical thinking still seems to be something that, number one, we need, but number two is not as relevant, or not relevant, but not as at the forefront as it needs to be. And the second most common thing that I find with leaders today is we have lost the ability to communicate effectively. We struggle to know how to conduct ourselves in a conversation. We struggle to know how to deal with crucial conversations. And what mentoring will do is it will help you get that experience back where it needs to be, so that it's at the forefront when you go to have conversations, when you're dealing with people, when you're dealing with clients, so that it's all there. And from my perspective, it doesn't happen enough. And if I get brought into an organization to work with somebody that is in the C-suite, and I've experienced that a fair amount lately, is that those are the 2 things that seem to have gone off the railroad tracks, so to speak. And that's where I typically will end up spending some time with those leaders, is going over the critical thinking and communication skills. And finally, I think the last one that I should touch on is the aspect of self-care, is that because of the nature of everything that's going on, we don't take the time to take care of number one, which is ourselves.
Fascinating situation. Doug, our second question is, explain to our audience how your first book, The Gift of Mentoring, can help people in various fields of work. And in that, Doug, for members of our audience who don't know what mentoring is, would you include explaining, from the starting point, what is mentoring itself? How does that differ from, we hear a lot about coaching today, and we, of course, have people in classrooms.
So mentoring, the best way for me is to give you the definition that I use, that we use through the international mentoring community, and it's a 2-way trusted relationship where both the mentor and the mentee or protege are going to learn and grow together on a personal and professional basis. And what's really important here is that most people focus on mentoring being that career development tool that, somebody that's going to help me write my resume, cover letters, going to do some job coaching and stuff like that. And we lose sight of the personal growth mentoring. So by that, I mean the self-esteem, the self-confidence, the self-worth, all the selves, as I like to call them. And we need to make sure that we're able to use those tools to be able to do that moving forward. And the reason that this will work for no matter where, what field you're working in, is that industry specific, and this is a good point because this is one that a lot of people always struggle with, but mentoring is something where industry specific experience is a nice to have, not a need to have. So if I've got the mentoring skill sets, the knowledge, the competencies, the processes, all of those things that are governed, that support the mentoring process, if I have all of those in place, it doesn't matter what industry I was working in. And as an example, I've worked with senior people in the energy and gas sector, in manufacturing, in the healthcare area, you name it. I've done stuff in that particular thing, and I don't need to have that industry specific experience. And so as a result of that, the gift of mentoring is just that. It is a gift that people need to embrace and put it into practice.
Well, that sounds good. And what is involved in the book, The Gift of Mentoring? What will people learn from that book?
The best way to take a look at the gift of mentoring is that it's mentoring 101.
Mm-hmm.
It gives you, all the tools that you're going to need to begin to start the mentoring, whether you're starting it from the practice of mentoring, or whether you're, starting to, I think I want to be able to give back. I want to, do some things like that, so that gives us the opportunity to be able to do that. And it's, from my perspective, it's certainly it's something that we can use in a lot of different areas, and that's what the book is intended to support. Is that if you want to know, the aspect of, there's information there on history, there's the history of mentoring, and it goes, way back. It's even older than what I am. So, but there's industry skills. There's all kinds. There's stuff on leadership and mentoring. There's, we talk about, there's, I believe, 5 or 6 case studies that are in there that actually bring the mentoring process to the forefront. And so there's a lot of material in there. And that's why I like to refer to it as Mentoring 101.
Well, it sounds fantastic. How about your second book, You Are Not Alone? This came from your own experiences. Explain how mentoring can bring value to the support structure for mental health.
Well, the first thing is that I wish I had known what I know now. I wish that there was a support structure back when I was first, back in the 1970s, when I was a member of the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, and I was subjected to a lot of trauma that I had to deal with, but I had to deal with it by myself. And what the book You Are Not Alone does is, number one, it helps to try and alleviate the stigmatism that there is about mental health, and that, if you're suffering from mental health, you just need to push it down and keep it inside you, and not talk about it. And what I intended with the book is to be able to get people to understand it's okay to reach out and say, I need help, and understand that you are not alone, that there are people that will actually help you, and, help you go through that. It helps. I know for where I am, is that there's a lot of issues with regards to, with the health sector, with wait times and all that. A mentor who is properly trained can act as that bridge in between. So as an example, how I typically describe that is that I've been diagnosed with a mental issue that I need to see a psychiatrist. So I go for my initial appointment, and then I'm told by the psychiatrist, come and see me in 6 months. That's my next available appointment. And what I'm proposing and suggesting is that your mentor can actually be there for you, and will be the person that you would go to during that 4 to 6 month gap while you're still waiting to get in to see your psychiatrist or psychologist. So they're going to act as the buffer, sort of the buffer between for the wait times, they're an individual that's going to be able to listen and hear and not pass judgment. So they're able to listen and hear. How I typically describe it is it's somebody that I have confidence in, that I know that they're going to create a safe place for us to have a conversation, that we're going to be able to walk beside each other, and I'm going to be able to, help them wherever I possibly can and not cross over into the space that the psychologist and that maybe, that they operate in. So for me, it's a matter of just being there to help is the most important thing.
Well, it sounds great. Both of your books sound like they would bring a lot of value to people. Doug Lawrence, how can our audience get more information about you and the work that you're doing?
The best way is I'm very active on LinkedIn. So if you do a search on Doug Lawrence, I usually pop up fairly quickly. So you can you'll be able to tap into a whole bunch of information there. You can also go to my website, which is www.talentc, so the word talent with the letter C on the end, .ca. And there'll be a place there where you can click on a button and it'll send me a message and we can kind of go from there. But probably one of the easiest approaches for most people who want to get in touch with me, and this happens quite regularly, is to just send me an email message, and you can send it to doug.lawrence. So that's doug.lawrence, LAWRENCE, at talentc. So the word talent with the letter CN, with the letter C, sorry, on the end, .ca. And I will get back to you as quickly as I can. And it can be a simple question that you need an answer to. It can be you're interested in maybe having someone walk beside you as you struggle with your own mental health challenges and issues. And I'm here for you to be able to do whatever we need to take care of that, because you need to remember, with me, you are not alone.
Fantastic. Folks, this has been a great connection with Doug Lawrence, an expert in mentoring. Right, here's the headline. It says it all. Mystery drones flew over Langley military base for 17 days. Folks, when I heard this story, I heard it in my car. I was screaming in my car. That's how angry I am about this situation. We have got to get a hold of our members of Congress and say this situation needs to be fixed. And now, this is based on multiple sources. The story is based on incidents in December of 2023, but it just came to light. I wonder why. I want to note that I'm the son of a career Navy man, and I am very familiar with the Hampton-Newport News part of Eastern Virginia, where these two stories take place. There's a tremendous concentration of secret material being developed there. The Quantico base, of course, is up the highway near DC, but there are training facilities at Langley, very important ones, including the CIA training base. I tried to get on there once and was denied admission despite being a good and honest American citizen. However, I guess if I had a drone, I could have just flown over it. According to the reports, at dusk for 17 straight days last December, a dozen drones flew over Joint Base Langley Eustis, a sensitive airfield where, get this, F-22 Raptor stealth fighters are located. Nobody shot them down, and to date, nobody claims to know who did the drones. Let me guess then, how about the red Chinese communists who are out to get us? I am not sure why the story took so long to get out. I am obviously outraged. What kind of a military do we have? It's time to fire people and get some real military folks in charge. And the solution proposed by these clowns? I can't make this up. They want to put anti-drone netting up to protect the fighters from the drones. No, no, no. If you are stupid enough or corrupt enough to fly a drone or drones over a secure military facility, then you deserve to have the drone shot down. And then they need to hunt you down and lock you up in jail for a long time. This is serious, folks. This is not joking around. It's not a toy. At the same time, a report from nearby Newport News, Virginia, says a Chinese national graduate student from Minnesota was convicted in July for taking drone footage of Huntington Ingalls Industries Newport News shipbuilding. Get this, they found his drone in a tree. When they checked the SD card, the authorities found photos of U.S. Navy vessels or vessels intended for use by the Navy being built, according to court documents. They catch this spy trying to board a plane to China with a one-way ticket. He admits to spying, and he only gets 6 months in jail. What? Most people get more time than that for jaywalking in some countries. That's right, convicted on 2 counts, and he gets 6 months on each, but they're served concurrently. Concurrently. It means at the same time he does 6 months for 2 convictions. I call for life in prison without the possibility of parole for anyone spying on our military. This type of nonsense has to end. There's been a series of these reports of people spying, of people supporting the enemy, people on our military who are supported by our military doing bad things, and we need to get tough. This has to end. We must make an example of spies and traitors. Thanks for joining me for Saving America. If you have questions or comments, please find me on various social media sites. I'm Dr. David D. Schein, and